Hello everybody. Today we're going to talk about air ride and the horse trailer business and how that all fits together. I'm Andrew Lyons. I've been at Transwest for over 20 years now and have been involved in the air ride full horse trailer part of all that for almost that long. So I've got a little history for you today. To go back a little further, I grew up in Australia on a ranch. We had to learn how to fix our own things, how to work on stuff. So I've always had a good working knowledge of how things go together, partially because of how I grew up. And it's been good, and that's helped me through the years get to the point that where we are now and helped us get these air rides to where they are. Like I said, grew up in Australia, moved to the US in '92. Been involved with horses all my life as well, so that helps me understand the correlation between horses and horse trailers. So I know how it all fits together. I know how the vet bills also tie into this equation. I'll talk about that a little bit more. Yeah, there's a lot of interesting pieces. I'll probably forget today some pieces, so we'll do another one at some point, I'm sure. But let's start here. I've got some displays. I've got some bits and pieces to help along the way. So let's go back again. In 2000, somewhere around there, we started putting air ride on horse trailers. A company called Unique Air out of Oklahoma is who we started with, and it was short-lived because we didn't understand all the pieces of the puzzle and how to make it work. That air ride worked, but it came apart over time. It wasn't sustainable. And then we hooked up with another company, and there's a couple of gentlemen I'm going to mention, Dave Croston and Al Vandenberg. They had a lot of influence on how this air ride system has all come together. They've had huge, and they have a lot of industry knowledge, not only in the horse trailer business, but in the truck side. Every commercial truck now, that runs up and down the road is on air ride. So this is not something just unique to the horse trailer world. It's in the commercial business. You don't build a truck today unless it's on air. The horse trailer business hasn't gotten to that point yet. But I believe one day it will, because the benefits are so great. So that brings us to about 2002. They came up with an air suspension called an LTA, and it was built very basically with some bell cranks and some air cans from a commercial brake system. Wasn't that good. It was a starting point, but it wasn't great. Then that evolved into what we call the LBS air ride, and that is still available today through different avenues, and we'll get more into that later. And it utilized conventional airbags, which we'll show you here in a minute on this display. And it was a big upgrade, and it worked, and it helped us to get kind of to the next stepping stone. So that all, went along, and it was okay. In 2009 is when it really opened up, and the technology got to the point, and we realized some of the shortcomings that had been haunting us earlier on. Some of the problems were we would get an air ride to work, but if something failed, the trailer basically, you couldn't operate it. In 2009, the system that came out let us go back. If the air ride didn't work, we were still on the axles that everybody else was riding on. So I want to show you something here quick that'll help explain all this. So this cutaway here, this is actually a cutaway from a current production style torsion axle. The centerpiece, the big square shaft in the center, is basically connected to this crank, on the end here, and that can rotate, and the spindle that you see there to where your wheel goes, so your wheel assembly, your hub assembly goes on here, and then your wheel, etc., goes on there, and the rotation of that crank gives you suspension. It's independent side to side, and it's a good suspension, but it literally relies on these 4 pieces of rubber, those pieces of rubber changing shape as that rotates gives you your suspension. It works great in a loaded scenario. The biggest issue I see with torsion suspension is that as the load changes, it doesn't know how to adjust. It cannot adjust. It is a set suspension. So a torsion axle trailer will ride better with a load on it than it will empty. Empty, they typically like to bounce. But this torsion axle setup is under lots and lots of horse trailers, cargo trailers, all kinds of trailers in the US right now. It's very, very commonly used. So what we did in 2009, there was a suspension released called an Airflex that utilized this suspension, this torsion axle, and then basically all it is we mounted that torsion axle on airbags. So let's go around to this side. So this display here, underneath here, I'll wait till Cherish gets under here. So those airbags now isolate that torsion axle from the trailer with air. You can see under there the shocks as well. This was originally offered without shocks. I don't like the version without shocks because they bounce too much. You might be able to see it here. Can you see that bolt? Can you see that bolt and that air valve and everything? So that's your pivot point. It's basically a trailing arm suspension, a version of it, and then the airbags we showed you. So what that does,
It's right here.
yep, that bolt there, that's your pivot point, and then your airbags at the back, and that lets that axle float basically on air. Your shocks are there. I'll move this just a little bit for you, Cherish. This device here is on all of these air rides and on also a lot of commercial vehicles. So what that does, it automatically adjusts the amount of air in the bags in relationship to the load on the trailer. So let's talk about that a little bit more. Your air ride trailer is sitting at a certain height. As you load it, it will sink because the amount of air in the bags won't hold the weight up, so it will literally sink. That valve senses that through a linkage system and readjusts the air pressure so the trailer comes back to where it was. So that's what gives air ride the big advantage over like a torsion axle, because it knows how to adjust itself for the various loads that you may have. And that, and that gives the beauty of it doesn't matter whether you have 1 horse on or 10 horses on, depending on the trailer, or 1 cow versus 20 cows, it can automatically adjust. So the beauty of that is the ride is very similar throughout the different weight range of whatever your cargo is. So that valve is part of the secret of what happens here. The other thing that valve does, it also lets us dump the air ride. And when we say dump the air ride, that basically means we can drop all the air out, lower the trailer, and make it easier to load. If you're loading cattle or horses or whatever, when that trailer drops, it only drops about 2 3/4 inches, which doesn't sound like much, but in suspension, in the land of suspension, that's quite a bit. And I'll show you that here in a little bit. Actually, we can show you that here. Can you get a good, I'm gonna drop this. I don't know how much we can actually see, but you'll see it go down. So that's the air ride actually dropping all of the air out. And all of the trailers that we set up, that is on there, that's available. So as you load cargo the suspension can be lower. And here I can trip it back and make it come back up. That's more dramatic. So yeah, it just gives you an advantage. You know, your trailer's lower, you don't have to have your ramps as steep, cattle don't have to step up so far. If you're loading hogs or sheep or whatever, it just makes it easier. And it lets the trailer sit down and be more stable. So you might have like let's say you have a living quarters. It's nice to be able to drop the air out of it while you're parked in camping so that everything is more stable and it's lower. So there's a lot of benefits to air ride, and you know, we've only just started touching on that. There's you know, we'll go through more of that. Let's show them. I want to show them something on here too, so that they know how to run. This box here is pretty simple inside. It's just basically an air compressor, a tank, and some valves. And you know, there's a battery connection. If you have a trailer with air ride on it, most likely it'll have something like this. Very similar. It's simple. It's basically an on and off switch, and then there's a lower and a raise. You don't have to, there is no in between. You don't have to worry about, you know, how many horses do I have? Do I set the valve different? The other valve takes care of all that. So it's very simple. It's lower, raise, compressor on and off. The maintenance is very simple. One small maintenance trick is depending on what air ride you have, these are the most prevalent, so this will be typical. There's a valve here. You pull this and it drains the water out of it. The air compressor will kick back on. And the reason you have to do that, when you compress air, it heats. When the pressure is released, it cools, it makes condensation. It happens in all air rides. Commercial trucks have automatic dryers. We don't use that much air in this application, so we don't need as much, but it is very important to do that. And we can add automatic drains if people want them. That is an option. If you don't let the water out, over time the tank will fill with water. Then that water starts to make its way down all of your air lines, into your valves, into your fittings. They start to gum up, and you probably won't really notice it until winter. So the first time it freezes, it'll bust your valves, it busts fittings, it gets into your airbags. It's not a good thing. Yeah, usually come wintertime, we know who hasn't drained their tanks. It shows up. Let's look. We have a nice 8-horse Cimarron here today, kind of to show you some things on. This is a triple axle trailer. Not long ago, triple axle trailers I was very hesitant to build. And the main reason is, on a triple axle trailer you get too much axle scrub. So what happens when you turn, there's too much pressure spread over too big of an area, so as you turn tightly, especially hot pavement, you know, a hot day, a big load, you get a lot of friction, and as you turn, it will literally try and tear the tires off these trailers. You'll see a triple axle trailer turn on a hot day, and it will just, the tires will be leaned way over. So what Air Ride has let us do, because Air Ride, I can control each axle, I can now dump that rear axle. You won't really see much on this demonstration because all it does is it just takes the load. We can hear the valve. I don't know if anyone else can, but so there's a valve on there that takes the pressure. It literally removes the air pressure from the suspension on that rear axle. So what that does, it's just literally letting all the pressure off that rear axle. So now when you turn this trailer, all the pressure is on the front two axles. The third axle can just slide around. And we're going to do a drone video here probably in the next week or so, and I'll show you how the turning radius changes and how the amount of pressure, the side pressure on your wheel assemblies, your brakes, your hubs and bearings and everything changes, because you can destroy a triple axle trailer on a hot day if it's loaded heavy. So this is, I mean, it's a huge benefit that you can get to run a triple axle, because a triple axle trailer runs down the road probably better than anything. It rides better, it stops better, you've got extra brakes. There's a lot of redundancy there, so you have a huge benefit. So the problem was the benefits of a triple axle were overridden by the problem of turning. So now that we can do this, we will basically give you this. You put it on your key ring in your truck, and you can turn that dump on that rear axle on and off. You have to be careful. If you run down the road loaded at highway speeds and you forget this, that's a bad thing. You don't want to do that, because now all your weight is on your front two axles. Your rear axle's not carrying any weight. So we've put on, let's sneak over here, then I can tell you some more. So what we do is we put this light on these trailers, and that is the indicator that your air dump, see, I can turn it on and off. That's your indicator that your air dump is either on or off. If the light's on, your axle's dumped. That's for when you want to turn. If you get caught in a parking lot, it's tight, you can't get turned around or something yet. So you literally dump that axle, you can turn around. As soon as you get out of the bind, shut it off, and then, you know, off you go. And it works very well. We've got some, this is an 8-horse, we've got some 10-horse trailers on the road that have this system on them, and the owners love them. We're actually going to do an interview with a horse trainer here probably in about a week that has a 10-horse setup like this, triple axle air dump, and we can go through, you know, the benefits that he's seen and a lot of things. This is a guy that's traveled a lot, has won a lot of money, and has some real legitimate, you know, there's a legitimate story behind, you know, why he runs a trailer like that. There's a few other benefits to Air Ride that I want to talk about today. What Air Ride does is reduces the amount of shock load that goes through the body of the trailer while you're traveling. So if you go back a few years, all of our pickups, when I first came to the US in '92, there was still a lot of gas pickups on the road, big trailers, etc. On a good day, you know, those pickups would run 65, 70 miles an hour. There was a lot of torsion axles, there was a lot of spring axles. Over time, what's happened, all of our pickups, our tow vehicles, have gotten bigger, better, faster, stronger. They're incredible. So now everyone runs, we'll say everyone runs 75, 85 in Wyoming, because the speed limit's 85 in Wyoming. So when you increase the speed, the shock load that's coming from the road up, travels through your suspension, increases dramatically, and the faster you go, the greater those shock loads get. So when we were running 454s and 460s gas motors and the first diesels, it wasn't as big a problem. It was still there, but it wasn't as big a problem. As we've gone faster and faster, the shock load coming through these trailers has increased dramatically. So what Air Ride does, it dramatically decreases the amount of shock that goes up through the trailer. That airbag now absorbs that shock. When you hit a bridge seam running 75 miles an hour in that truck and you feel that big whack, imagine what that does to your horses, your cattle, whatever you got in, cargo, doesn't matter. So that Air Ride now can absorb that. These trailers, we joke around that these trailers now ride better than the pickups, and they do. It's quite incredible the ride that we've gotten with the combination of the Air Ride and the Torsion. So a huge change there. So what that does, you know, as we go up through the trailer, so this shock load now, we've reduced the amount of shock, so all of this trailer now, they don't crack as much. Your door hinges don't wear. If you look at an aluminum trailer that's got 70, 80, 100,000 miles on it, all of these hinges will have black stains running out of them. If they haven't been washed for a while, there'll be black coming out of there. That's worn out That's aluminum literally wearing out. On the air ride trailers, that doesn't happen. If you go and look at an air ride trailer that's been on the road for a while, go around and look at it. All the little cracks that appear over time, you know, you get a trailer that gets over, 100,000 plus miles, go look at them, and it's amazing how much difference there is in the body of those trailers. But the true benefit is your cargo. So if you've got horses on there, cattle, show cattle, whatever, think about the change in the shock load. If you've ever ridden in the back of a trailer, and we have, testing air rides and doing stuff, I can't recommend that you do it, but we've done it to test, and we're going to do some more videos on just to more dramatically show what happens. But if you've got a horse that's worth anything, horses that you've spent a lot of money on, you run up and down the road, you show cattle, you've got a lot of money invested. And I know what vet bills are like because I have horses. So what it costs to put an air ride on a trailer, it's not cheap, but neither is the vet bills, the care. We haul horses to shows. We can come in a day later on air than everybody else, and we don't have to let our horses sit and rest up and sometimes medicate because they're on air. The other ones that are coming in on traditional suspensions, I mean, they literally need an extra day to rest. So, the benefits are huge. There's another safety factor too that I want to talk about, is braking. So with air ride, there's an equal amount of pressure on all axles. A torsion axle has very limited travel. So if you run with your trailer either nose high or nose low, the amount of pressure on the axles is not equal. With an air ride, because they're all connected together, the pressure is consistent all the way across. So what happens on a torsion axle, if there's any kind of change in the road or something happens or you hit the brakes and there's a shift in the angle of that trailer, the weight changes on the axles. With air ride, it stays the same. It remains constant. So when you hit the brakes, you have the same amount of, basically downforce across all your wheels. And in a braking application, that helps a lot because now all the brakes, every brake can basically have the same effect, and you can actually stop in a shorter distance. So if you have a torsion axle trailer and you tow it perfectly level, you're basically the same, but you have to be careful. You have to change for load, change for the height of your pickup. So there's a lot more work involved. With an air ride, you don't have to worry about it. It will automatically do it for you. So there's a lot of benefits out there. I think that's kind of the bulk of today. I have a lot more little bits and pieces, and we're going to do some other interviews. We're going to look at displays. We're going to do some videos of basically cargo and the habits of cargo at speed, with air ride, without air ride. So we're going to do some of those videos in the next couple of weeks. So yeah, there's a lot more good information coming. Today, it went fast. So like I said, I've been doing this a while, so there's a lot of information here. So I just want to share it, and we'll be back with more videos. If you want to get a hold of us, we're Transwest Truck Trailer RV. So you can find us on the internet. Give us a call. If you call into the main line and ask for any of my sales staff or anybody or myself, you can do that. 303-684-3400 or transwest.com is the website. So yeah, give us a call, and hopefully we can help you out. Thank you.